Kia ora, I'm Daryl Baser. Welcome to the South Today's special look back at the major news events over 2019. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll show you month-by-month highlights of the year in news. January saw the introduction of electronic scooters to Dunedin, almost immediately drawing concerns about their safety.
Lime scooters quickly clocked up thousands of kilometres on Dunedin's roads, footpaths and cycle lanes within a few days of their launch in January. However, the new mode of transport generated a number of safety complaints, and a 26-year-old woman was critically injured when she rode into the path of an oncoming truck at night. Otago's sea lions continue to grow in population, with recently born pups such as this one relaxing with its mother Gail among pines on Otago Peninsula.
Gail, as a 4-year-old, had her pup last year right out in the open Papanui Inlet, so it's nice to see that this year she's found somewhere a little bit more discreet.
It wasn't such good news for the endangered yellow-eyed penguins, with starving chicks being rescued from the catlands and being looked after at Otago Peninsula's Penguin Place.
We're seeing it everywhere along the coastline with the yellow-eyeds. They all seem to be struggling a little bit. Reasons being a lack of fish out in the ocean or something going on with the food supply. We've seen diseases going through in the chicks.
High up in the Cadrona Valley, 2 refurbished huts were officially named after the pioneer farming couple who started farming the area almost 100 years ago, and whose descendants are still around.
It's named after Robert Lee, my grandfather, and he farmed this area from 1922. The hut used to exist up about 5 kilometres further up into the dock estate, and then as part of the tenure review process the hut came out. The Kurtleburn hut is up there now. And we brought the Bobley hut back down so it could have a retirement on the snow farm.
Otago University's Hayward College underwent extensive renovations while the students were away, with contractors working to a very tight schedule.
We had Christmas Day off and Boxing Day, but other than that, the trades all worked through with significant numbers on site, so really good to see a good level of resource through the project through that period, which was often a nice time to have a break, but everyone was here mucking in, so good.
Queenstown motorists were frustrated with delays, with some saying it could take up to 50 minutes to travel 20 kilometres. And local Mayor Jim Bolt pleaded to the Otago Regional Council for more bus services.
The main thing we're pushing for in the short term is more services between Lake Hayes Estate, Shot Country and Queenstown directly.
And work continued on Dunedin's new bus hub, with the project behind schedule and its $4.4 million budget already blown out of the water, with an extra $900,000 having to be stumped up by the Otago Regional Council.
In February, tertiary institutions opened their doors to students, with one agricultural college only starting classes after an 11th hour reprieve, and the Dunedin community was shocked by the brutal stabbing of a miniature horse.
After several weeks of delay, students were invited in February to start classes at the Telford Farm Institute near Balclutha. This came after the Southern Institute of Technology took over the running of the struggling agricultural college.
I think it's really important to celebrate the start of the year. It's been a delayed start, and of course there's been a lot of uncertainty for a number of weeks, and so it's really important that we make a big statement to the students that they're really welcome here and we're pleased to be open.
Later on, in August, the government announced a funding boost for Telford of nearly $5 million over 2 years. And University of Otago students also celebrated the start of the year with orientation, which included the annual toga party. Police arrested 2 people in connection with a body found near a road north of Dunedin, as well as a blood-splattered crime scene in the Dunedin suburb of St Clair.
There is a male who's been arrested. He's 37 years of age and he will be charged with murder. The second person is a woman aged 30 years and she's being charged with accessory to murder.
The Dunedin community was also shocked when a miniature horse in Waitati named Star died from multiple stab wounds, despite efforts from veterinarians.
It's absolutely deplorable and we look to hold the person or persons identified to account because we all have pets, and it's not acceptable in any way, shape or form.
I think a minute's silence for the death of the little horse is perhaps in order, but you may not think so. I'm sure that everyone in Dunedin is absolutely horrified about this event.
Can I say that all of us share your considerable concern that there are people or a person or people in our community that would do something like that. It is of grave concern.
Possibly children.
Glad they're not mine.
The case against a man accused of stabbing Star is ongoing. 20-year-old Hannah Morgan travelled back to Bluff the easy way after swimming across to Stewart Island.
I'm just so overwhelmed with everyone's support and encouragement and kindness and generosity, and it's just, I could never have imagined such an outcome, and I'm just so grateful.
And the Queenstown Lakes Community Housing Trust finished the first of 6 houses for qualifying families.
The biggest part of owning this home is to give us a security now on having our own home, unlike before we're renting.
The scheme sees the families able to purchase the houses through a 100-year lease, with the trust keeping ownership of the land in perpetuity.
March was one of the darkest months in New Zealand's history when a gunman opened fire in a Christchurch mosque, causing the deaths of 50 people, sparking vigils around the region as people showed their support for the Muslim community.
After a delay due to bad weather, March saw oysters in their dozens being caught in Fovo Strait and shipped to Bluff processing plants.
It wasn't particularly good. The weather was just not favourable, but anyway, that's life oystering, life fishing.
Also delayed, Dunedin's long-awaited bus hub opened with its new paving, shelters and electronic timetables to a cost blowout of an extra $900,000 over the almost $5 million budget.
The work on this capital item, the bus hub, is funded out of our transport reserve, so it doesn't have a direct impact on rates.
Exactly a week after a gunman attacked a Christchurch mosque, Dunedin's Muslim community gathered in their Clyde Street mosque, with close to 1,000 others outside to show their support.
I learned last year that Islam is a religion of peace, and I love coming to the mosque, sitting in their prayers at the stadium. When the call for prayer went out, I lined up with them. I didn't have a prayer mat, but they put a prayer mat in front of me, and there's a peace that I feel in their prayers that I don't feel in my own church.
Several of the women outside wore a hijab as one of the many symbols of support to their Muslim sisters.
Oh, it's amazing. Honestly, I was at a loss for words. I showed up and it was quite overwhelming in the best sense of the word, and it means that even through all this hate and, what's happened, that we're accepted, and it's made us feel valued and loved and part of the community. So, yeah, it was wonderful.
In April, resident doctors took their fight to Health Minister David Clark's Dunedin office, and Anzac Day was marked across the south.
Members of the New Zealand Resident Doctors Association took their fight to the front door of Health Minister David Clark's Dunedin office. They said patient safety was at stake if young doctors were forced to work longer shifts.
What they want to do is take control of our contract and the way that we work and how we work and where we work at the same time. They could put it onto longer shift rosters or different shift rosters that we don't think are safe, but also they can move us around the country, break up our families.
The doctors had walked off the job as part of the 5th nationwide strike in response to the failure of both sides agreeing on employment contracts. Several thousand people gathered at Dunedin Cenotaph for the Anzac Day Dawn Parade, marking the day New Zealand and Australian troops started the Gallipoli landings of 1915.
100 years ago, New Zealand marked the first peacetime Anzac Day. Across the country, people gathered to remember losses and experiences that were still war.
Just 4 years after a $1.2 million refurbishment, the Mosgiel RSA restaurant and bar closed to the public due to decreased patronage and increased expenses.
Well, unfortunately, it's a fairly sad day for the Mosgiel RSA. We're having to close down the operating elements of the club, and that is the bar and restaurant, due to the inability to cover the overheads and expenses of the club from the return we're getting from those operating elements.
Later on in October, the RSA sold its nearby bowling club and vowed to try and reopen the restaurant building.
In May, ancient moa footprints were discovered in the Kyburn River by a local farmer, and thousands of Dunedin school pupils took part in climate change protests.
Moa footprints, up to 4 million years old, were discovered in May in the Kyburn River by local man Michael Johnson.
You can just see the wee shelf with the one footprint on it, and you look a little bit more, you can see another one.
A few days later, the prints were carefully cut out of the soft rock to be preserved at the Otago Museum.
We've been fighting the river, the pump, the inflow through the gravel, and we've finally started to get some progress on lifting them.
The public are now able to view the moa footprints as they dry out in the museum.
Quail Rise, Tuckers Beach, slipway, open!
Queenstown Mayor Jim Bolt officially opened Frankton's new slip road, allowing safer access for right-turning Quail Rise and Tucker Beach commuters. The opening was a culmination of 5 years' work.
It's really great to see it in the last 6 months, to see it all coming together, to see how such a simple idea, how complicated it turned out to be, but it's really great that it's open now, and I'm just can't wait to drive my own car up and have a go.
And southern motorists noticed climbing petrol prices, with the cost of fuel at its highest in 6 months. The average national price for 91 octane was $2.37, not much more than what it is now. Near the end of May, thousands of Dunedin school pupils took part in a climate change protest, with many other protests following throughout the year.
June was a month of midwinter celebrations, with hundreds of glowing lanterns in the Octagon for Dunedin's Midwinter Carnival. And Queenstown hosted the annual opening of the Winter Festival, with local and overseas visitors taking part.
June was a month of midwinter celebrations, with hundreds of glowing lanterns floating into Dunedin's Octagon for Dunedin's annual Midwinter Carnival. Antarctic wonders and wildlife were the theme of this year's event, which saw about 30,000 spectators in attendance. Despite the carnival's success, organisers say it's a constant financial battle, with decisions needing to be made on how to keep the event going. And hundreds of torchbearers paraded down the streets of Queenstown for the opening of the annual Midwinter Festival, with both local and overseas visitors taking part.
We had an awesome time with the torches walking through town. As visitors, it's incredible to experience the culture of Queenstown.
First time to Queenstown, so it's a really great experience.
We didn't know this was going on today, but it was great.
International dance icon Shona Dunlop McTavish was farewelled in Dunedin with dance tributes after she passed away aged 99. Dunedin actress Louise Petherbridge spoke of her decades of friendship with McTavish.
To say thank you to Shona for more than 30 years of love, and also to be uplifted by her and supported by her.
Around 1,000 riders turned up for this year's Brass Monkey Rally on the exposed Maniototo Plains near Aotearoa. The number was half that from earlier years, which had seen more than 2,000 people taking part. Organisers were disappointed at the turnout and said they'd be lucky to break even, with only a few young people showing interest.
We actually had a young kid just hopped on a bike from the car park and came in. He's just turned 14, this is his 40th birthday, and he's making the effort to come here. And he rode through there, came in on his rally side, and he's going to spend the whole night here with his family.
And organisers said next year's 40th edition of the Brass Monkey Rally may well be the last, with the possibility of going out with a bang with a fireworks display.
Dunedin's midwinter illumination continued in July, with thousands flocking to George Street for the Glow event, and an exhibition of filmmaker James Cameron's deep sea explorations opened at the Otago Museum.
Thousands of people had the chance to admire glowing displays installed in the middle of Dunedin's George Street. The display of light installations by Angus Muir proved a hit with the crowd, the sculptures having been displayed all over the world, including Jerusalem, Singapore and Auckland. The partial road closure was the first of many City Council experiments to shift the balance of the area in favour of pedestrians. A $7.5 million funding boost was announced to protect southern lakes by doubling the funding for control of lakeweed.
An ounce of prevention now is worth a tonne of cure. There's been a huge amount of work that LINZ and Boffamiskal have been doing, informed by NIWA's research, to actually look at how we expand this control program.
An exhibition of filmmaker James Cameron's deep-sea explorations opened at the Otago Museum.
I'm really hopeful that some of the people who come through and see the Cameron exhibition, and they see the associated NIWA exhibition about New Zealand's work exploring the Southern Ocean, I hope the young people who come and see that will get really fired up and really excited.
Dunedin's PBT transport depot was cleared of toxic chemicals after a spill of concentrated and highly corrosive acid.
In August, Dunedin South MP Claire Curran announced she won't be seeking re-election. And more than 160 collectors hit Dunedin streets for the Life Matters Suicide Awareness Appeal.
August saw a controversial proposal by the community-owned Oamaru Licensing Trust for a floating hotel in Oamaru Harbour being scuppered. Christchurch architects had helped design concept plans for the hotel. However, the developer said they would no longer be backing the project. 20 Kiwi-built houses in Wanaka's North Lake subdivision went on the market, with the two-storey, three-bedroom terrace houses costing up to $650,000 each. The houses were just a few of the 200 Kiwi-built houses planned for the subdivision. A month later, the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern admitted building the houses in Wanaka was a mistake. South Dunedin Labour MP Claire Curran announced she would no longer stand in the 2020 election, ending a 12-year career in Parliament. Labour leader Jacinda Ardern thanked Curran for her service and said people would be hard-pressed to find someone more genuine and passionate about the work she did. More than 160 collectors hit Dunedin streets for the 4th annual appeal to raise funds for the Life Matters Suicide Awareness Trust.
We don't receive any money, so everything that we get is from donations and grants that we apply for, but that's all. So to run the Hope Centre, to run our bereavement group, our Safe Talk courses, we have to do street appeal days like this.
Artists with autism and Asperger's exhibited landscapes, abstract pastels and sculptures at this year's annual exhibition at the Otago Museum's H.D. Skinner Annex.
We're all individuals, we have similarities, but we have, as you can see with the amazing array of, unique expressions, that there's a lot of unique and individuality within the group.
And Invercargill Airport became the country's first non-international regional airport to get a regular jet service. The service is set to run 5 days a week, with the potential of air freighting over 2 tonnes of cargo, meaning perishable high-value freight, such as seafood, could be on plates in Auckland by lunchtime.
In September, a Dunedin beach was transformed into a massive artwork by artist Tony Gillies, and world champion Palmerston-based motocross rider Courtney Duncan was given a hero's welcome.
1.5 kilometres of St Kilda Beach in Dunedin was transformed into a massive art canvas by Dunedin artist Tony Gillies and about 50 helpers to promote suicide awareness. Rakes and sticks were used to carve nearly 685 giant hearts into the sand, each representing one of the people who took their own life in New Zealand last year. As intended, the tide eventually washed the sand clear. Palmerston motocross rider Courtney Duncan was welcomed back with a hero's welcome after having been recently crowned Women's World Motocross Champion.
I've known all these people in here pretty much my whole life, and all of these people have been through it with me. I mean, it's hard to describe it, especially the city in general. I come home 3 years in a row and with failures, but still the city raised me, each and every time. So to be able to come home this time and and bring the medal, you know, not only for myself but for these people in the city. It's special.
A few days later, Duncan was feted again at her old high school in Palmerston in the town's first civic parade since the Queen visited in 1954. Workers from Port Otago objected against having to work long hours when fatigue could become a hazard. Their protest received support from other union members, such as train driver Dave Kearns.
The issue that these members from Port have got is around being asked to work more hours, and the issue is around fatigue. They know when it's safe to work late at night and what fatigue does to their body, as we do in rail. We drive trains at night on our own right through the night. If the workers say it's unsafe hours what they're being asked to do, that's good enough for me. They know better than anybody.
Cultures from across the Pacific were well represented at the 26th Annual Polyfest in Dunedin's More FM Arena, with more groups arriving from further afield than ever.
This year we've been able to welcome a number of new groups as well, who haven't been here before. So we've had Cromwell College, for example, perform this afternoon. And also Fenwick, all the way from Oamaru.
Fire crews worked hard to bring a scrub fire on Dunedin's Flagstaff Hill under control. The fire started near the Pineapple Track, and as the blaze spread towards Rudd Road in Helensburgh, threatening pine and eucalyptus plantations, 7 homes were evacuated as a precaution.
This is something we think about every summer when it's really dry. So you think more often about, will it be necessary to leave, yes or no? You always hope not, but that's the way it is. So yeah, we got our stuff together, the essentials, documentation, insurance papers, the fact that we owned the house before the fire, all this kind of stuff.
In October, tragedy struck with student Sophia Cristani losing her life at a Dunedin party, and a chemical spill at Dunedin Hospital closed a major highway. Also, Dunedin welcomed a new mayor.
Tragedy struck early in October, with student Sophia Cristani dying in a crush as hundreds of students tried to leave a Dundas Street party in Dunedin. The following weekend, thousands of people from all walks of life took part in a mass clean-up of the student precinct in Cristani's memory.
It's a great opportunity to get everyone back as a community, rally together and do some good in the community. Obviously it's not the most tidiest place, a lot of students around here, so it's a great opportunity to not only repay the honour of the family and what they want to do, but to get out and do something good for the community. And it's not only students that are out here, there's everyone. Elderly people, families, kids, so it's great to see.
A spill of the powerful disinfectant cleaner Rapicide closed the northward part of State Highway 1 outside Dunedin Hospital.
There was a small amount spilt into the lift shaft, and the fire service are going in to check the gas levels to just make sure that's all okay.
Dunedin gained a new mayor after former Mayor Dave Cole stood down. The local body elections saw Aaron Hawkins win by more than 16,000 votes, almost 2,500 votes more than his main rival, Councillor Lee Vandervis, who was quick to criticise a remuneration boost for councillors on committee chairs.
I believe that it's a mistake to significantly increase remuneration in respect of chairs' positions, and that it tends to create an A team, B team situation on council, which I think has been anti-democratic and unhelpful in the past.
Southland was left reeling from a homicide investigation after a 9-year-old boy was found dead in the community of Otautau. A person charged with murder appeared by audiovisual link at the Invercargill High Court and was remanded in custody.
November saw nearly 3,000 hectares of scrub and tussock near Middlemarch burn in a fast-moving fire, and Vinod Scanther was found guilty of murdering 16-year-old Amber Rose Rush in Dunedin in February.
Peace activists received a windfall in November, with the Lottery Environment and Heritage Fund granting over $300,000 towards erecting a memorial to conscientious objectors, such as Dunedin's Archibald Baxter.
There are plenty of war memorials up and down the country, and there's no memorial whatsoever to honour those who chose a different path. And it took a lot of courage in the First World War in particular, and even in the Second World War, to conscientiously object to national conscription.
Nearly 3,000 hectares of scrub and tussock near Middlemarch were caught up in one of the fastest moving blazes ever seen by fire crews.
The fire at its peak was advancing around 1.5 kilometres an hour. That's very fast. So in other words, the fire was travelling over 1.5 k's every hour. So that meant that we couldn't get in front of the fire with the helicopters or ground crews for a number of reasons, mainly because of the speed of the fire and the smoke didn't allow us to get to the head of it.
The fire's ash polluted some of Dunedin's main water reservoirs, with public asked to try and conserve water. 32-year-old Venod Scantha was found guilty of murdering 16-year-old Amber Rose Rush in Dunedin in February 2018. Her mother, Lisa Ann Rush, was found dead from suspected suicide 4 months after the murder.
This has been such a horrendous time for us all, for all the family. We're very thankful for everyone out there who has helped us individually and as a family to get here.
Scantha is set to be sentenced in March. The Otago Daily Times for 19th of November printed a series of advertisements showing deep and meaningful song lyrics, which turned out to be the words of the new album by British band Coldplay. The group's singer had visited Dunedin for several weeks in 2003 with then-partner Gwyneth Paltrow. And while in Dunedin, he hired a piano from the local Begg's music store.
And he had a really good time there, and really enjoyed the piano he played. And so I guess that was all part of the deal. We just loved it here in Dunedin.
December saw flooding in Queenstown and Wanaka. The Otago Daily Times was under fire for a controversial Tremaine cartoon, and Christmas events filled the region with colour.
The last month of the year saw campaigners for human rights gather in Dunedin's Octagon, calling for, among other things, the establishment of a local immigration office.
FEMA Kai from MBI, the ministry told us that over the next 18 months we're about to have another 12,000 people in Dunedin, which means huge infrastructure is required, social infrastructure.
Shut down this racist newspaper. Protesters made themselves heard outside the doors of the Otago Daily Times following the publishing of a cartoon by Garrick Tremaine, which many saw as making fun of the measles epidemic in Samoa, where the death toll was 60 and still rising.
We stand with the people in Samoa in the middle of a crisis, locked deep in trauma. Can you imagine them making a mockery cartoon about the people that were lost in the Pike River mine? No, they wouldn't. But those are white lives, you see. We can't laugh and make a joke about them.
Content of the cartoon was insensitive, and I apologise without reservation for publishing it.
Heavy rains caused surface flooding in Wanaka and Queenstown, with lake levels rising and lakeshore businesses under threat. An army of volunteers pitched in to sandbag off potential flood waters. However, rainfall in the surrounding mountains eased off and lake levels came short of causing significant damage.
The flows of the Matukituki and the Makarora have dropped. They've dropped overnight, so that's the water coming in is lessening a bit, which is kind of positive. Had that continued at the flow, it would have had more impact.
And of course, December meant annual Christmas parades were celebrated across the region, with Santa visiting everywhere from the smaller towns such as Kaiapoi and Bluff, as well as the larger centres such as Invercargill, and of course Dunedin.
That concludes our look back at the top stories from the past 12 months. Our live bulletin is set to resume on January 13th, 2020. For the latest news from across the southern region, head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on Facebook and YouTube. Season's greetings, ka kite anō.
This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.